All right, it is 1:05. Looks like we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for the Winter Weather Preparedness webinar for New Yorkers. We have a jam-packed hour with a bunch of wonderful partners to teach you some tips, so we're going to hop right into the agenda. Starting off is cold-related illness and staying safe from New York City Department of Health. Next is how the city keeps the pathways clear from New York City Department of Sanitation, and closing off on what community members can do from New York City Emergency Management. Our goal today is to provide winter weather safety information and community preparedness strategies to stay safe and healthy throughout the winter weather season. A little bit about us. New York City Emergency Management helps New Yorkers before, during, and after emergencies through preparedness, education, and response. The city is responsible for coordinating citywide emergency planning and response for all types and scales of emergencies. It is staffed by more than 200 dedicated professionals with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise, including individuals assigned from other city agencies. Now, after this brief introduction, I'm going to kick it off to Department of Health.
Thanks so much. And I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Didi, or I see I didn't put Didi on the slides, or Dr. Ray, or Madhuri is my first name, whatever you want. And I have my email on the presentation in case you want to contact me. And then my colleague, Hannah Costello, is going to be presenting the second half of this presentation, and her email is also listed there. Can you advance the slide, please? So I know it's a short presentation, but we're just going to cover a couple topics, just around cold-related illness and death, and then how to stay safe. And then there are a couple of programs or initiatives that you can use to help yourself and your neighbors stay safe. And advance the slide, please. So, is cold weather related illness serious? And yes, actually, every year there are on average 180 cold weather related emergency room visits and 240 cold weather, and these mean emergency room visits where people go home right afterward, but 240 cold weather related hospital admissions. And advanced slide, that's great. Finally, there's about 15 hypothermia deaths. And if you look at hypothermia deaths in New York City, 75% of those deaths occur with individuals who were exposed to cold outdoors for a long period of time, but a large number, 25%, were exposed to cold indoors. And this is mostly in homes that were unheated, and these were single and two family homes usually. Cold also can create an increase in deaths related to chronic conditions. So this may mean you have, for example, a heart condition, or you have severe asthma, and the cold can exacerbate those illnesses. We have a lot of great data on cold and health, and winter and health, on our data portal at on.nyc.gov/data portal. And, I mentioned that, we talk about risks sort of in two different ways. Outdoor risks are the most severe, right? Though they don't present all the risk, they do present 75% of deaths. And the majority of the individuals who suffer bad outcomes due to cold weather are people experiencing homelessness who don't have a warm shelter. And then other individuals who are outdoors for a long time in the cold, including individuals who are incapacitated due to alcohol abuse or drug dependency. And can you advance the slide, please? Now, we mentioned, of course, the indoor risk, which is, we keep hammering this one because it's one that's easy to forget. But this really occurs with individuals without heat in the home. So this is not a situation where you're often seeing people with, the heat low. I know that, landlords sometimes keep apartments chilly, but for the most severe outcomes, we're looking at people without heat in their home and who have another risk factor for heat illness or death, cold illness or death. Individuals who are older, individuals with physical disabilities, or other conditions that make it difficult to leave the home, and then just chronic health conditions, including heart or lung disease, diabetes and high blood pressure, or mental health or developmental disabilities. So one of the most important takeaways from this presentation is, when do you call 911? If you encounter an individual indoors, outdoors, what are the most severe signs where you should activate emergency medicine or emergency medical systems? And for hypothermia, right, and this is your whole body is cold, you can see intense shivering, dizziness, difficulty speaking, lack of coordination, but you can also see sluggishness, drowsiness, confusion, and then shallow breathing, which is a big sign. For frostbite, that's a condition that occurs, often in the extremities, but, is maybe only a part of the body. Hypothermia and frostbite, of course, can occur together. And, if an individual, especially in their toes or fingers, has red and painful skin or very pale skin, and the skin is unusually firm or waxy. Additionally, numbness is another sign that usually accompanies frostbite. So to stay safe outdoors, we talked about indoors a little bit, but to stay safe outdoors, even though deaths are often individuals experiencing homelessness or individuals who are incapacitated outdoors, it's still possible, as we mentioned, to develop cold-related illness just by being outdoors for a long time. So you want to dress in dry, loose layers. You want to make sure as much skin as possible is covered. Be careful, of course, walking on snow or ice. And then, a big one is, if you are driving, clear ice and snow from your tailpipe. Otherwise, carbon monoxide can actually back up into your car. And then if you are shoveling, take breaks often. Important for you or for neighbors or for other individuals in your community that if you are older or have a disability and you have difficulty shoveling snow from your own property, you can call 311 to be connected to assistance. Now, indoors, we talked about outdoors, we're going to talk about indoors, right? So, the first suggestion we have to stay safe indoors is to tell your super or landlord if you don't have heat, right? Remember that deaths indoors occurred in unheated areas. If you can't afford heat, or if you're, you have tried to call your super or landlord and they continue not to work on bringing back the heat, you can call 311 for assistance. For many buildings in New York City, they, landlords are legally required to keep the heat at certain temperatures, and, are required to provide that heat for free. If you do have a garage, never run your car inside of the garage. Always make sure the garage door is open, and this is to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning. If you do heat your home, which we recommend, you should heat your home safely, right? If your heat is broken, if you can't afford your central heating, and so you want to make sure that you're doing it safely. Never use stoves or ovens to heat your home. That's unsafe. You want to make sure you have working carbon monoxide detectors and smoke alarms. And, for space heaters take a lot of energy. Plug them directly into the wall. Try not to use extension cords to run your space heaters. And finally, make sure that babies who have more difficulty controlling their temperatures than adults do are warm and in a safe sleep environment. And can you advance the slide, please? Finally, we tell, we mention a lot, like, try to go indoors, right? Because outdoors is very cold. And so one of the ways to avoid being very cold outdoors is to go inside. However, there are a bunch of respiratory viruses floating around. We've got COVID-19, we've got the seasonal flu, and then especially for kids and for individuals who are older, we have respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, both of which are all of which are pretty bad this season. And so luckily, though, all of these are the same kind of virus, right? And so many of the protective measures against one of the viruses works against all the others. So some of them don't really have commonly used tests. So for COVID-19, tests should be widely available, and you want to test before and after travel or large gatherings. That's to prevent spread of infection at your gathering and then at your home. Wear a face covering. This works for all the viruses, especially in public indoor spaces where you're around people you don't know, but you are indoors, and large gatherings, even when they're outside. Wash your hands is good for everything all the time. Just wash your hands. Kind of hard in the winter because your hands get cracked, but you can use a moisturizer, use a lotion on your hand, but still wash them frequently. And finally, and then we want to stay home when sick. If you are able, as much as you are able to stay home when sick to prevent infection of others. But then finally, for both COVID-19 and for the seasonal flu, there are vaccines available. And you can find free sites for vaccination at our vaccine finder at vaccinefinder.nyc.gov. No vaccine for RSV, but hopefully one will be coming down the pipeline soon. And I'll pass it to my colleague now.
Thanks, Dr. Dede. I'm going to go over now some community-based efforts that you can do to keep yourself and your family and your friends safe during the winter. The first is a national program called the Home Energy Assistance Program. You might have heard of HEAP during the summer for AC. It can help you get AC, but many people don't know that they also have winter benefits. HEAP can help you pay for heating in your home. You can check if your household is qualified. If you pay for heat directly, or if it's included in your rent, if your landlord may cover your heat, you could also benefit for HEAP. You can qualify if one person is less than 6 years old in your house, or you have older people living in your home, also people who are permanently disabled, that would qualify you for this program. You also have to meet income criteria, which I'm going to go over on the next slide. You also are automatically qualified if you receive other types of government assistance such as SNAP, temporary assistance, or SSI Code A. There's also additional assistance that could be available for heating equipment repairs and shut-off notices. Emergency benefits are emergency benefits that can help you in your home if you're in a heat or a heat-related emergency. Those start January 3rd, but for the regular HEAP heating assistance, that opened up November 1st, and that's going to be open all the way until April. So if we have a cold March, you can still apply and help get your energy bills covered. Next slide, please. So these are the income guidelines that I just mentioned. Please refer to these when you're discussing if your household could qualify. You can see that the column on the left corresponds with how many people live in your house, and the right quantifies how much you can make maximum for that household. And these, I was just telling the group before that these numbers actually went up from last year to match inflation. So if you didn't qualify last year, please check again because you might qualify this year because they were expanded. Next slide, please. And if you or your loved one, whether they live in your house or you know that they live in another place in New York City and they rely on electric medical equipment to survive, please tell your electric company so they can warn you if there might be a power outage. This group of people is particularly susceptible for medical being hurt during a winter storm, and registering with your power company can help save a life. And so please call either Con Edison or PSE&G to register with them. Let them know that you use medical equipment that relies on electricity. Next slide, please. Many of us and our friends are isolated or alone during the winter, especially as people might not go outside as much. If the wind's really bad or if it's really cold, people tend to stay more inside. Therefore, it can be life-saving to check on your family, friends, and neighbors who you might know alone or have a chronic medical condition. If you know your neighbor across the hall from you is elderly and lives alone, it can, or if it's really cold that day, make sure that they have heat and that they're warm. If they don't have heat on, or if it's not running for whatever reason, there's a few things that you can do to help remedy that. First, it's really important to report that there's no heat to the building owner or to the super. If this is a consistent problem, please report it to 311 if the problem's not fixed by your landlord or your super, since that's, a legality that they must do. If they don't have heat, please, if you see that, don't just leave them there. Please help them find a warm place to go, even if it's just for a few hours. And you can also use electric space heaters temporarily, safely. We'll go over that later. And then long-term, helping them see if they qualify for HEAP and making sure that they have enough layers, blankets to keep warm if they have to stay inside. And next slide. And please sign up for the advanced warning system, which NYCEM is going to share a little bit more about in a few moments. And that's it. You can click next slide. So thank you so much. Dr. Didi and mine's emails are there. I know there will be a Q&A, so we'll be around to answer questions if you have any. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Didi and Hannah, for this great information. Now, our next portion of our presentation is from Department of Sanitation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick Giacaro. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Affairs for the Department of Sanitation. I'm going to go through a brief presentation on what we do to prepare for snow season. It really is a 365-day operation. In the winter, we're making sure we're securing supplies, we're going over our routes, we're making sure the streetscape is the same, making sure we have the right equipment to handle the upcoming snow season. But if you want a more detailed presentation, essentially, or more information, nyc.gov/snow has all of the borough snow plans. It has a snow FAQ, which is like the most frequently asked questions we get about our operations. You can find all of that there. Depending on your borough, you can read the borough snow plans. It'll tell you exactly how many pieces of equipment you have in your sanitation district, how many sanitation workers, and it gives you a more detailed look. This is just a basic overview, but it hits all the high notes. So we had a very relatively low amount of snow last year. People were pretty happy with our response, but that also goes into the fact that we didn't have that much snow. Hopefully this year we won't have that much snow. We could have another good productive snow season this year. We're doing a lot of the same things. We have over 6,500 sanitation workers who receive snow training this fall. We have more than any time in the past 20 years. So that means those collection delays we may have, it means our response time, we have more equipment, all that leads into a better snow response we're predicting for this year. So during our preseason planning, sort of what I mentioned before, we have 3 24-hour weather reporting systems. They run 4 times a day from October through April, letting us know we could catch way early when there should be a predicted storm. Our sanitation workers, you might have seen snow vehicles in your neighborhood driving around the streets in like September and October. This is so we can make sure that, one, our sanitation workers are familiar with the routes when a snowstorm actually hits, and 2, and maybe most importantly, that the vehicles can still fit. There's been no changes to the streetscape, like open restaurants, making sure we have the right equipment for the job at hand when snow season comes. Because once it snows, we want to make sure these guys can get out on their route and just get it done. We also have night plow, which is in November. So if anybody notices their garbage is collected at a different time, generally we have more personnel on the later shifts than we do in the summertime, where 90% of collection is on the 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. shift. This is just so if there is a storm that comes quick, we don't have to call everybody in from the garage. So you might have a collection time difference from last year. And then salt, probably our most effective treatment that thing that we have to treat the streets, that we begin buying salt pretty much throughout the year. In the summertime, you might know, as you can imagine, like on the Northeast, all the states are buying a ton of snow. So we need to make sure that we can secure 700 million pounds of snow ready to go. So we're okay with that. Before the storm, we have something new now. We were piloting it the last 2 years, but we now have 30 pieces of brine equipment as opposed to maybe just a couple in years past. But we will pre-treat all entry and exit ramps to highways. We're treating bus lanes, hilly streets. It's essentially just liquid salt. And on some streets, the salt, especially hilly streets, it'll just go straight to the bottom and it's very ineffective. So we found this is a very helpful way of getting things done quickly, pre-treating the roads during hail, any sort of frozen precipitation. We're still salting, but this is a great tool that we've been able to utilize. We'll begin salting and brining before the first flake that comes down. And then we'll get into our plowing operations. Once we have 2+ inches of snow on the ground, that's when we begin plowing. So our trucks aren't actually, they don't touch the ground, because obviously if you have the plow touching the ground, you could pop manhole covers, you could damage the road, you could cause a lot more damage than you would with a little bit of a lift. So there is a little bit of a lift. The plow blades are fixed to the right. So I always tell people, if you know there's a snowstorm coming, try and park on the left side of the street, because the piling is going to happen on the right side. So if you have to move your car, make sure you move it to the left side. And that's because we have 2-lane roads, we have multiple lane traffic. Essentially, we have to plow to the right hand of the street. We couldn't plow to the left. We use smaller pieces of equipment on the narrower streets, like these large plows and spreaders wouldn't fit. We have something called a holster. And during the storm, if you've called 311, we'll use that information for situational awareness, but we're not going to divert a truck. It operates on its route continuously until the routes are completed, but we still need that information. So we definitely recommend folks call 311 and let us know if, say, a plow hasn't been down your block or it's insufficient. You can make those complaints. We just won't divert the trucks to address them immediately. So once we finish clearing the city streets, we then move towards the pedestrian infrastructure. That's like bus stops, crosswalks, anything like that. If you happen to have a fire hydrant in front of your property or a crosswalk ramp, we ask homeowners, as you can imagine, there's hundreds of thousands of bits of pedestrian infrastructure. Impossible for us to do it all alone. We really need everybody's help. So if you can get that, fantastic. We are responsible for clearing out the bus stops with no cover. DOT would be responsible. They have their own vendor that handles clearing snow from bus stops that are covered. We have a ton of equipment, these smaller skid steers that help us get to the bike lanes fast. We should have extremely fast response for the protected bike lanes. We've got new equipment for that. We used to do it where that would be later on. Now we're clearing them simultaneously. There's been a big commitment to expand protected bike lanes, so we want to make sure that people can use them and use them safely. But that said, they shouldn't expect, if you ride your bike to work, you shouldn't expect it to be blacktop, and you should still exercise caution. And if you can take public transportation, probably the safest way to go after a snowstorm. But, we just ask, wear a helmet, be safe, and maybe take it a little slower than usual after a storm. Plow NYC is probably the easiest tool to find out if you're not familiar with it. You could find out when was the last time we've been down the street, essentially to the minute. So all of our trucks are equipped with GPS. You'll see it's color coded here. So you could find out a few pieces of information. So one, depending on the color, you'll find out if it's a critical street or a sector street. So a critical street is the main thoroughfares you know, where hospitals, police stations, highways, those have larger amounts of equipment allocated to clearing them. And then you have sector streets, which are basically everything else. Our street, residential streets, essentially everything that's not critical. We clear them at the same time simultaneously. The only difference really is the equipment that might be allocated, the piece number of equipment. So you'll see here the color, depending on the color, it'll tell you when the last time a truck had been on your block. So if it's green, it'll say like, oh, 10 minutes ago. If it's red, that would be like a long time ago. So that will go live pretty much any plowable storm. So plowable meaning more than 2 inches. So you can go out, check that out, find out whether or not your street has been plowed.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for that great information. Now, with all of this information from our community partners, you are probably thinking, what can your community do to prepare for winter weather emergencies? Well, I can tell you, our main focus is to update and practice your emergency plan. If you don't have one, Ready New York offers a free workbook that guides users through establishing emergency support network, capturing important health information, knowing how to evacuate, and gathering different emergency supplies for your go bag. These guides are available online and in 13 different languages and audio format. If you would like the Ready New York My Emergency Plan, you can visit NYCEM/Ready New York to access the information. We also urge you to understand some winter terms, such as freezing rain, ice storm, winter storm warning, and heavy snow. Knowing these terms and familiarizing yourself with this will make you safe and prepared when the next hazard may hit. In addition to knowing this plan, winterize your home, go bag, and car. Have safe emergency heating equipment available in all these different places. For people with functioning fireplaces in their home, keep an ample supply of wood, utilize portable electric space heaters, and keep a fire extinguisher always on hand. And as always, install and check batteries and smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. This is in your home, but of course, if you do have to evacuate, make sure you have a go bag that is prepared for the winter season, like packing socks, gloves, hats, scarves, and blankets, all to keep you warm and prepared for a winter storm. If you do own a car, before the winter sets in, give your vehicle a maintenance check. Some items that you could check include batteries, a heater, oil level, ignition system, exhaust system, and more. In addition to this, install some good winter tires that have adequate tread when you drive through the streets. Assemble an emergency supply kit in your vehicle with items just like from your go bag, blankets, sleeping bags, some items to keep you warm, maybe some newspapers for insulation, as well as car-specific items like a windshield scraper, broom, booster cables, and even a brightly colored cloth to use as a flag for flares. Remember, of course, just like us, prepare your pets and service animals for this winter. Make sure they are inside during this cold weather and wipe down your dog's paws. Ice melting chemicals can truly make your pet sick. And be sure, as always, that your pet or service animal has plenty of food and water. And next, I will kick it off to my colleague, John.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is John Sosa, and I'm part of the Community Preparedness team in NYCEM. So my goal today is to spread good winter preparedness tips to you all so that you can share all this info with your networks and your community. So first, we got the shelter in place and heat travel bans. So in the event where there is a winter storm warning issued by the National Weather Service, the safest course of action is to stay indoors as much as possible and to heed any travel bans that may be in place. It's important to stay warm, but it's also important to practice safe habits when indoors. And we'll go over that in the next few slides. When you travel, or when you have to travel, make sure someone knows you're going out. The best case scenario is someone should know the route you're taking along with the destination, and it's also best to just not go alone. For your car, you got to keep, just make sure to keep stuff like extra gloves, hats, and any other means of staying warm, just in case you may need them. And for this, you can just refer to your emergency car kit. The two pictures we have here, we have a little girl sipping on some hot chocolate by the window, And then the second picture is a highway with a sign saying winter driving conditions, reduce speed. So if you have no heat or hot water in your home, do not remain silent. The best thing to do, which we talked about a little bit before in the previous slides, is to, well, first of all, you want to solve the problem fast so that things don't end up getting worse, especially when the weat's getting worse as well. To speak to your building owner, your manager, your superintendent, and if issues are not resolved with them, just contact 311. The Department of Housing Preservation and Development will make a call with the building owner to get issues resolved for you. For emergency heating, which we went over as well, the Human Resources Administration administers the Federal Home Energy Assistance Program for low-income people needing assistance. When it comes to registering life-sustaining equipment, we went over this as well, just to reiterate. So register that with your utility provider. And when you see houseless people outside during a snowstorm, especially, just call 311 and they'll get that all sorted out for you. The picture here, it shows a thermometer buried a little bit in the snow. So it's gonna first off describe these images. So the first one, going from left to right, the fireplace is lit and with firewood, and there's a person kicking their feet up just a few feet away from the fire. There's an oven, we got a smoke alarm, a wood stove, a space heater, and a CO2 detector. So here's just some quick tips that can be beneficial to share with you and your community as well. Instead of using a stove for heat, which can be dangerous, consider using blankets, sleeping bags, and big coats when indoors. For portable space heaters, be sure to keep them about like 3 feet away from drapes, furniture, bedding, yourself, and any other family members, dogs, pets in general. And be sure as well, do not cover the space heater. So if you have something you got to dry somewhere else. Don't throw it on top of the space heater. Don't put clothes or blankets or any of that on it. Make sure your smoke and CO2 detectors are up to date. And to do that, just check the batteries, make sure it turns on, make sure if it has any like beeping capabilities, make sure it's beeping, all that good stuff. Other ways to heat up your home and to keep the warm air inside is to cover any cracks in doors or windows with towels or weather strips. So before a storm hits, it's important to have all you need in the form of emergency kits, which we talked about a little before, but neighbors, family members, and other members of your community may not be as prepared as you are. So you got to be sure to check up on those neighbors and family members to ensure that they can prepare themselves, or you could offer up any of your extra supplies that you may have just lying around. So by helping them prepare, this can give them time to purchase things they may not already have and to check on their equipment to make sure they're fully operational, just such as their CO2 detectors, the space heaters, all that. And of course, you can also share any emergency tips you may have learned along the way before to stay safe in the extreme winter weather. So the image we got here is it shows, oh, sorry. The image says neighbor check, always check with each other in case of an emergency. And there are multiple people messaging each other, making sure they're okay. So to be sure when clearing out snow from your driveways, property, etc., that you do not overexert your body. When you're wearing all these heavy layers, it causes your body to sweat, and that sweat causes you to lose heat faster. So just make sure to take breaks every now and then. If there is still snow covering sidewalks 24 to 48 hours after a snowstorm, you can call 311 to file complaints regarding the hazardous path. For property and business owners, they're required to clear out 4 feet wide paths for pedestrians to safely pass. And for more information on that, you can refer to the snow removal fact sheet. For property and business owners, you are not allowed to throw snow into the street, and that's a surefire way to get a fine. The image here shows a man shoveling snow outside, and he's wearing a big winter coat, a hat, scarf. So I just want to reiterate that 311 is an invaluable resource to New Yorkers. And you can call 311 for any of the following. So dangerous conditions, which can include sidewalks being covered in ice and thick layers of snow, fallen trees, or any other type of debris just blocking the path for pedestrians and vehicles. If you lost heat or power, which we talked about already. If you see someone in need of immediate assistance, like needing shelter, and yeah, just helping out the homeless in general. So the picture here, it shows a very gloomy kind of setting. The apartment buildings are kind of barely visible due to the snow creating a hazy visibility. And there are large piles of snow blocking the sidewalk and the streets partially. So you and the members of your community should know how to get information. And going from the top to the bottom, we got Notify NYC, which is a free opt-in notification service that allows New Yorkers to receive information about emergency situations and planned events throughout the city. Notify NYC offers messaging in 13 languages. We got NYC Severe Weather, which is a website for NYSEM and city updates. We got the Advanced Warning System, which sends out emergency information for organizations that serve people with disabilities or others with access and functional needs. We also have the NYC Emergency Management Community Preparedness newsletter, which if you sign up for, you get a weekly update with important alerts and updates before, during, and after emergencies. And of course, you can find any other info in our traditional social media channels below. And that's about it for me.
All right, thank you, John. Does anyone have any questions about today's presentation? You can drop them in the chat and we can answer them.
So I just want to reread a couple of questions that were responded to in the chat. Of the 700 million pounds of salt, how much is brine?
Yes, I did answer in the chat. We have just over 68,000 gallons of brine.
Thank you, Nicholas. And the second question also came for you, which you responded. Does Plow NYC tell if bike lanes have been cleared or just the roads?
Yes, so they don't specify or make a distinction between bike lanes or the roads. It's just essentially when a plow had last been on the road. But the way we've been clearing right now, it'll be safe to assume that the bike lanes have also been cleared, but it doesn't make that distinction.
Thank you for that. Another question, this might be for Tony Ann or John. Where does one begin with all this great information? What's one step that people should try to take today to prepare for the winter weather that's coming up in these next couple of weeks?
I could take that one, Mariah. I would say start with your emergency plan, but start small. Go online, research some information, and take those steps to start building a communication plan and deciding what you're going to do for the winter weather ahead. John, if you'd like to add anything that you recommend?
Yeah, I agree, honestly, with what you said. And also just keeping a checklist of things that you would probably need for staying warm indoors. So if there's anything you're missing from that checklist, just be sure to buy it.
Thank you so much. This question is for Hannah and Dr. Didi. Hannah, you covered the HEAP. HEAP is first come, first serve. Do you know if people can still apply for this winter?
Hi, yes, I can check about that for you. I'm not sure if the funds have run out or not. According to the New York City website, it's still live in New York State website. It says it's still live, but I will double check on that.
Thank you. And Lucy, we see your name, so we'll be sure to try to follow up with you within these next 2 business days as well. Do you have any information about safely heating cars, such as tailpipes? Question mark. Sounds dangerous, Dr. Didi.
Well, I think, and I also wanted to just mention with the HEAP that there is like regular HEAP and then there is emergency HEAP starting in January. And those are 2 different application processes. And so in terms of the tailpipes, I think it's worthwhile, especially if you park outside, to check that your tailpipe is clear of ice and snow. I don't think it shouldn't be like a huge deal. I mean, often it's just snow that falls into tailpipes, or if there's snow up to, there's snow all the way up to the tailpipe, then you just want to make sure that in addition to shoveling out the rest of your car, you just clear out that tailpipe. It shouldn't be like a complicated activity. Maybe, even before you walk in the car, just do a little circle of the car, or take a look at the back. And then I think, in many of us like to warm up our cars. I think that's something where you really want to be careful that even if you have a garage and your garage is cold, if you warm up the car so that the heat will be on and it'll be comfortable when you start driving, then just make sure that garage door is open, and that, the reason that you're looking at the tailpipe is that the exhaust can come out of the car freely instead of backing up into the car.
Thank you for that, Dr. Didi. We seem to have reached the end of our questions. Tony Ann reminded us to just start with creating your go bag and making a simplified plan for your household. Make sure you have a bag of emergency supplies in your car if you are a driver. We have reflections of a storm that came unexpectedly where folks got stuck on the highway for 8 to 10 hours. And so, never assume, carry that bottle, a couple of bottles of water in your car. For me, commuting all the time, my grandma always reminds me to have water and a flashlight when I'm under the subway. So if you are a subway rider, try to have a keychain flashlight and have some type of liquid just in case we too get stuck underground for longer than we expect. There are somewhere to start. There's never a right or a wrong, but what we don't want to happen is for this information just to fall flat on the ground. We really do lean on you all to pick up the information and to share it out with your other community members, the folks that you're serving, and your family and loved ones as well. So we will definitely be sharing out this PowerPoint. We'll definitely be sharing out this recording. I'm giving a huge thank you to all the speakers for sharing this great information. Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Dr. Didi. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Tony Ann. And thank you, John, for sharing the information today and bringing a spark of energy in spite of it not being a happy information. But we truly do care about you as New Yorkers, and we hope that we have a very safe winter. We need you to stay in tune with the city's official source of information via Notify NYC. And that's another quick, easy win for you, is to get you and your loved ones and neighbors registered with Notify NYC. So we're going to leave on that note. Pass it over to Tony Ann if you have any other closing remarks.
I think we are all set. You said it all, Mariah. Thank you everyone for attending today. And on behalf of NYSM and everyone on this call, we hope you have a safe and prepared winter season.